As usual, I was stretching with resistance bands. One slipped and got stuck right, well, you can imagine where. The trainer tried to help. And right at that moment, my husband walked in. And he pulled it out. I know how it sounds. But it wasn't funny. Not in the way people might laugh retelling it over wine, shaking their heads at the awkwardness of life. No, it was worse than funny. It was too quiet to be funny. And too sharp. But let me go back. Not far. Just a few hours. Just to the beginning of that morning, when everything still felt like sleep. He was already gone when I opened my eyes. My husband. The bed was still warm on his side. I could smell him faintly. Soap, shaving cream, something vaguely citrus. The coffee pot had a thin ring of black at the bottom, already cold. He hadn't said goodbye. Or maybe he had. Maybe I'd just stopped hearing it. Our mornings had become a blur of doors closing gently and voices that no longer waited for answers. He used to touch my lower back on his way out. I used to pretend not to lean into it. I don't know when that stopped. I brushed my teeth too long, stared into the mirror without seeing anything, pulled on black leggings and an oversized t-shirt, not because I liked how I looked in it, but because it didn't say anything at all. I wasn't hungry, so I stood in front of the fridge pretending to decide. Then I packed my gym bag and drove. The Pilates studio is small and clean and always smells like lemon and rubber. I go 3 times a week. I don't know if it helps, but it gives structure to a part of me that keeps trying to collapse. When I first signed up, it was for my back. Or that's what I told him. My posture's getting bad. I think this could help. He nodded without asking questions. That was what we did. He worked, I moved. I was efficient, polite, decorative in the way a wife should be when she's quietly coming apart. My new trainer had only been there a few weeks. He was younger than me, but not a boy. Early 30s, maybe. Lean, calm, quiet. I noticed that right away. Not the kind of quiet that waits for you to fill it. The kind that listens. The kind that holds shape. He rarely smiled. But when he did, God, it felt like a secret being handed to you without words. He didn't touch unnecessarily. When he did touch, it was with precision, intention, never hesitation. That was what made it worse. Or maybe better. I don't know. His hands were steady, and they knew things. He would press into my hip and say, "Here," and my breath would catch. He'd kneel beside me and adjust my spine with the flat of his palm, and I'd feel my skin burn for reasons that had nothing to do with alignment. Still, it was professional. It was always professional. At least on the surface. That morning we were doing floor work with resistance bands. Glutes, hips, inner thighs. "Stabilize here," he said, his hand resting just above my knee, light but certain. "Anchor from the center." I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek. He was close enough that I could smell something warm on him. Not cologne. Skin, maybe? Or sleep. I tried to follow. Breathe in, pulse, hold. My legs were shaking, but not from exertion. And then the band slipped. 1 second I was pressing out against it, and the next, it snapped down and coiled between my thighs like a slap. Too fast. Too hard. Too deep. I yelped, more from shock than pain. My legs slammed together, instinctively trying to hide the intrusion. My breath hitched. My hands went down to grab it, but it was wedged. Stuck. Somewhere it absolutely shouldn't be. He moved before I could say anything. Dropped to his knees beside me, calm and focused. "Don't move," he said, gently. "Just stay relaxed." Relaxed? My face was burning. I could feel his fingers skim the inside of my thigh as he reached for the edge of the band. Slow. Controlled. His head tilted down, his brows drawn in that same expression he wore when correcting spine tilt or shoulder rotation. Not flirtation. But not neutral, either. His touch was clinical, yes, but it was too careful. And maybe that's what undid me. That his carefulness made me feel like my body was being read. Not fixed to read. And just then, in the middle of that impossible moment, the door opened. My husband. He walked in holding his keys in one hand and a smoothie in the other. He stopped in the doorway, blinked once. His gaze slid from my face to the trainer's hands, to my legs, to the band. No words, not right away. My trainer froze, his hand still on my thigh. I started to stammer something, anything, but my husband just walked over, set the smoothie down on the edge of the mat, and without asking, knelt beside me. One motion, one sharp tug, and he pulled the band out. There, he said. Got it. Silence. The kind that tastes metallic. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or vomit. The trainer stepped back, muttered something about water, and left the room. I stayed on the mat. My husband looked at me like he was waiting for something. An explanation. Or maybe an apology. Maybe just a joke. But I had nothing. I wasn't sure which part of me had just been exposed, and to whom. Later, in the car, we didn't speak. He drove. I stared out the window at nothing. I could still feel the imprint of both their hands. One had touched me. The other had claimed me. Neither had said my name. That night, I took the longest shower of my life. I stood under the water until my skin turned red. I washed between my legs 3 times. Not because I felt dirty, but because something was still buzzing there. A heat that wouldn't go away. I lay awake for hours after. My husband was asleep beside me, one hand curled loosely near his face. His breathing slow and familiar. He looked peaceful, safe, and I felt nothing. No, not nothing. I felt everything I'd been trying to silence. The memory of that hand, the focus in his eyes, the way my breath had changed without permission, the shame I should have felt but didn't, the fear of what it might mean that I didn't want to forget it, and then something worse, the terrifying ache of being seen, just for a second, but fully, and I wanted it again, even if I never said it out loud, even if I had to lie to everyone, including myself. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. I lay there beside my husband in the dark, our legs not quite touching under the covers, and every time I blinked I saw it again. His hand, the band, my own breath catching before I could stop it, the trainer's eyes, my husband's silence. The moment played in loops, not loud, but endless. It wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't arousal. It was something harder to name. Something lodged behind my ribs like a bruise I kept pressing, just to see if it still hurt. At some point I got up, moved quietly through the house like I didn't belong to it. The hallway lights stayed off. The fridge hummed. The night had that stillness that only people wide awake can hear. I stood in the kitchen, holding a glass of water I didn't drink. My hands were shaking just a little. Not from cold, from memory. That band, it wasn't just a mistake. It had slipped, yes, but it had also revealed something. Something I didn't know was still alive in me. That moment on the mat, when the trainer's fingers brushed too close, too slow, it had lit something under my skin. And the way I froze? It wasn't shame. It was recognition. And worse, it was want. When I came back to bed, he hadn't moved. He was asleep, arm flung over his side of the bed, jaw soft, chest rising and falling. I watched him. Tried to remember the last time I had wanted him to see me. Not talk to me. Not ask me how I was. Just see me. I didn't cry. I wasn't sad. I just felt awake and a little afraid of what that meant. The next morning, everything looked the same, but I wasn't. He made coffee. I sat at the table. He asked if I had plans that day, and I said something about errands. He kissed the top of my head in that automatic way he does, like someone locking a door out of habit, and left. As soon as I heard his car pull away, I opened the app. Booked a private Pilates session for the afternoon. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Just a pulse behind my ribs that said, go. I told myself it was about the workout. That my hips needed loosening. That I should keep the rhythm going. But I wore makeup that day. Light. Almost nothing. just enough to pretend I hadn't. And perfume barely there. The kind I used to wear in my 20s, back when I still waited to be noticed. I didn't plan to say anything. I didn't plan to do anything. I just needed to be in that room again. With him. To see if it was real or if I'd imagined the whole thing. He didn't greet me the same way as before. He didn't smile. His expression was careful, a little guarded. He asked how I was. I said, fine. We both knew it was a lie. We started slow, foam rolling, then band work again. But nothing about it felt routine. Every adjustment he made sent my nerves buzzing. A hand to the back of my leg, a shift of my hips, the way he said good a little too softly when I exhaled right. It wasn't overt. It wasn't inappropriate. But my skin remembered everything. Halfway through, he asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded. He paused, waited, like he didn't believe me, like he wanted me to say something else. But I didn't. At the end, as I gathered my things, he said my name. I turned. "You seemed different today," he said. "Do I?" He nodded. "You don't have to say anything, but if something feels off, I'd rather hear it from you." I didn't know what to say. The truth was messy. The truth didn't belong in rooms with mirrors and yoga mats. But I said the first thing that came. I didn't hate it. He didn't move, didn't react. But something flickered in his jaw. A tightness in the muscles there. "That's not the point," he said quietly. "I know." I left. Fast. My heart pounded the whole drive home. That night, my husband cooked. Pasta, salad, a bottle of red wine we hadn't opened in months. I wondered if he sensed something or if he was just trying. He asked about my day. I said it was long. He rubbed my shoulder at the sink while we did dishes. I flinched just slightly. His touch was familiar, gentle, but it didn't reach me. Not anymore. When we got into bed, he kissed my neck. I smiled. Let him. But my mind was somewhere else. My body followed out of habit. My thoughts didn't. I was picturing a studio, a band, a silence I didn't know how to break. The next day, I didn't go to the studio, but I drove past it. Twice. I don't know what I expected. Maybe to see him through the window. Maybe not. Maybe just to feel that thrum under my skin again, the thing I hadn't felt in years, the thing I didn't know I still had a name for. I didn't sleep again that night. I lay there with my eyes open, listening to the refrigerator hum downstairs, wondering if this counted as betrayal. If a thought, felt long enough, becomes a touch. If wanting to be seen by someone who isn't your husband is already the beginning of something you can't take back. The third day, I saw him by accident. Or maybe not. He was walking out of the building when I walked past again. I slowed, heart jumping. He saw me. Didn't smile. "You're not here for class," he said. "No. You were just walking by?" "I guess. You want to come in?" I said nothing, then nodded. Inside, he didn't touch me, didn't offer tea, just stood across from me, arms crossed, eyes searching my face. "I'm not stupid," he said. "I know something's shifting. I can feel it in the way you look at me. I'm not trying to cross a line, but I need you to be honest with yourself." I swallowed. "I'm married," I said finally. "I know." He didn't move closer, but the air did. "I don't want to be your escape," he said. "I don't want to be a mistake you bury." And then, so quietly it barely reached him, I said, "You're not." He held my gaze for a long time, then nodded once, like something between a truce and a warning. And I left. But that night, I stood in the bathroom brushing my teeth and found myself touching my lips like they didn't belong to me anymore. And I whispered, barely out loud, "I've already crossed it, haven't I?" Lying isn't something loud. It's not a slammed door or a lipstick mark or a dramatic gasp in the middle of the night. It doesn't come with perfume and broken glasses. It's something else entirely. It's smaller, more elegant, more poisonous. It slips under the surface like warm water, slow and clean. Lying sounds like "I'm fine" over breakfast. Like it was a long day said with a soft laugh. Like, I'm just tired, when what you mean is, I don't know who I am in this house anymore. I didn't lie to my husband in words. I didn't need to. I smiled at the right moments. I touched his hand when he reached for me. I asked about his meetings. I offered to pick up wine. I wore soft sweaters and said, I love you, when he hung up the phone. And yet, every time he looked at me, I felt like a locked room. Not because he was cruel. Not because he didn't try. But because something in me had already left and was standing elsewhere, in another place, in another room, watching another man who didn't ask anything of me except honesty I couldn't give. At the studio, everything stayed the same, and nothing did. He didn't say anything. He didn't touch me more than before. He didn't ask. And that was worse, because it meant he was waiting. And every moment I didn't speak made my silence heavier. He watched me differently. Not with lust. Not even with curiosity. But like someone waiting for me to stop pretending. Like he was giving me time to stop lying to myself. One afternoon, he asked me to hold a pose. A simple stretch, one I'd done 100 times before, but that day, I couldn't stay still. My legs were shaking. My breath was off. He came closer and placed one hand lightly on my lower back to correct the tilt, and my body flinched, not because I didn't want it, but because I did. And that terrified me. You okay? He asked, still not removing his hand. I said yes, but the word felt like glass in my mouth. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. After class, I left quickly, but before I reached the door, he said my name. Just my name. And I stopped. I turned. Slowly. You seemed somewhere else today, he said. I nodded. I'm fine. That's not what I asked. His voice was calm, not accusing, just steady. I didn't answer. I just left. At home, my husband was making dinner. He asked about class. I told him it went well. He smiled. He kissed my temple. I said nothing. That night, he touched me. I let him. I kissed him back. I let him undress me gently, the way he always did, and I tried to stay present. I really tried, but I couldn't stop comparing. His touch was soft, careful, familiar. It followed a rhythm we'd learned long ago, a pattern of politeness and muscle memory. And I played along. I made the right sounds. I breathed the right way. I held him the way he expected to be held. But my mind was somewhere else. And when I came, it wasn't for him. It wasn't even real. It was just relief, not pleasure. Afterward, I lay still in the dark and my body felt empty. Like I'd just handed out a performance I didn't believe in. I curled toward the edge of the bed and stared into the dark for a long time, eyes wide open, trying to find anything in myself that felt true. The next day, I didn't go to class. I canceled without explanation. Said I was sick. Said I needed to rest. And maybe that wasn't even a lie. Maybe I was sick. Sick of pretending. Sick of splitting myself into halves. The wife and the woman in the studio who didn't know how to breathe around him. I still drove past the building. I still slowed down every time. I still felt my chest tighten when I saw his car out front. But I didn't go in. I just watched the door like it might open and call my name. I thought that was distance. I thought that was control. But it was just longing in disguise. I didn't sleep again. My body wouldn't calm. My breath stayed shallow. My skin stayed warm in places it shouldn't have. On the fourth night, I stood in the bathroom with the water running and whispered his name to the mirror. Not loudly, not even clearly, just enough to hear how it sounded in the room. I felt sick after, like I'd betrayed something sacred, but also alive. It was the first time I'd said the truth out loud. I think about you. That's what I had wanted to say. And I did. Eventually. A week later. After class. I stayed after, waiting until the room emptied out, and I sat on the edge of the mat staring at the floor. He stood across from me, arms crossed. He waited. I think about you, I said. My voice was hoarse. Dry. He didn't look surprised. I know. then softer, like something between a warning and a plea. But I'm not going to be your secret. I'm not asking you to be. I lied. Aren't you? I left before I could say anything else. But the next morning, I woke up with his voice in my ear. Not literally, just in the shape of memory. My husband brought me coffee. I thanked him. I kissed his cheek. I asked about his day, but something in me was vibrating. A quiet, unbearable ache. Later that night, I let my husband make love to me again. I smiled. I played along. I said the words he needed to hear. But in my head, I was somewhere else entirely. Not in sin, not in fantasy, but in silence. A silence that only one man had ever filled. And I knew then, I was already gone. I just hadn't left the room yet. It was supposed to be the last time. We didn't say it, but we both felt it in the quiet between us. The air was too still. The room too temporary. A rental, probably. One of those barely furnished places with curtains that don't close all the way and a single lamp that hums faintly when it's on. He opened the door before I knocked. I stepped inside. He didn't touch me. He just looked at me like he already knew I wouldn't be staying long. We didn't kiss. We didn't rush. I sat on the edge of the bed, palms flat on the blanket, trying to calm the thudding in my chest. Not from fear. From the certainty that something was ending. He sat next to me, close, but not touching. Our knees almost brushed. The silence was thicker than anything we'd ever said aloud. His fingers opened and closed like he didn't know what to do with them. Then he said it low, like it hurt him to say it at all. I don't want to ruin your life. And I answered without hesitation, because it was the only honest thing left in me. Then don't. He looked at me for a long time after that. There was something tired in his face. Not from me, from waiting. I want more, he said. My stomach tightened. I didn't ask what kind of more. I knew. He wanted a choice. A presence. A name that didn't need hiding. But I couldn't give it. Not because I didn't want him, God, I did, but because I had already changed too much to belong to anyone again. So I didn't answer. I just reached for his hand. He let me take it. Our fingers laced slowly. The way we held each other that night wasn't desperate. It was reverent. No grabbing. No urgency. Just two people holding something they couldn't keep. We lay down fully clothed. Shoulder to shoulder. He pulled the blanket over us like he wanted to protect the space, not just our bodies. And in the dark, we whispered. I told him things I hadn't told anyone. I told him I was afraid of going back to my life because I no longer knew how to live inside it. I told him sometimes I stared at the fridge for minutes without opening it. That I forgot how I liked my eggs. That I used to laugh easily and now I didn't know how. That I hadn't touched my husband's face in weeks because I didn't know what to feel. That I wanted out, but didn't want to destroy everything on the way. He didn't interrupt. Just listened. His hand moved gently along the inside of my forearm, like he was memorizing the shape of my silence. Then he spoke. He told me he never meant for any of this to happen. That when we first met, I looked like someone who had already made peace with disappearing. That it scared him. And that when I started looking at him like he could see something inside me, he didn't know what to do with it. That he wanted it and feared it at the same time. That he had imagined me leaving, choosing him. But that he didn't want to be a reason. He wanted to be a reflection. That he would rather lose me than trap me in another version of a life I didn't choose. I think I cried. Not loudly. Just a tear or two that slid sideways into the pillow. I didn't want him to see it. He did. Of course he did. But he didn't say anything. He just moved a little closer, resting his forehead against mine like it was a prayer. I fell asleep for a while. Not deeply, but enough to dream. I don't remember the dream. Only that when I woke, it was still dark and he was still there, watching me like time had stopped. I got dressed slowly. No one said anything while I buttoned my coat or tied my hair. He handed me my bag, walked me to the door. There was nothing dramatic. No kiss, no final touch. Only this. He looked me in the eye and said, "I won't follow you, but I won't forget you either." I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. Then I left. The morning outside was pale and cold, wind in the trees, a dog barking somewhere behind a fence. The world was still going on, untouched. I drove home slowly, my fingers white around the steering wheel. My body felt warm and hollow at the same time, like a place that had been lived in, then emptied, then swept clean. At home, my husband had made breakfast. There was music playing low in the kitchen. He smiled when I came in, said, "There you are," and something in the way he said it made me pause, like maybe he felt it too, that I was finally really here after months of being elsewhere. We sat at the table. He poured me coffee. I asked about his sleep. He touched my hand, briefly, like it used to mean something. And this time, I didn't pull away. That night, he kissed me differently. Not more passionately, just slower, more carefully, like he'd been given back a version of me he hadn't seen in years. And I let him. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't comparing. I just let it happen. Because this time, I wasn't doing it out of habit or obligation. I was choosing it. Not for him. For me. Because now I understood what it meant to return to your life and not be lost inside it. To be home and still belong to yourself. Because I had given myself away once, in silence. And this time, I had taken her back. I didn't erase the other man. I didn't deny what happened. I carried it in me like a scar, small, invisible, permanent. Not because it hurt, but because it woke me. Because for a moment, he saw the woman I had buried. And she had come to the surface like breath after drowning. In the weeks that followed, I didn't see him again. He didn't write. I didn't call. But sometimes, I'd feel it, his absence, not like a loss, but like a presence that taught me something. I would fold towels and remember how it felt to want without shame. I would brush my hair and remember how it felt to be looked at like I mattered. I would make love to my husband and remember how it felt to be conscious inside my own skin. Not floating, not faking, just here, whole. I passed the studio once. I didn't go in. I didn't even slow down. But in my chest, something softened. I whispered thank you to no one. And I kept walking. I didn't need to stay. I didn't need to leave. I was finally completely mine.